Kia ora, good evening. One person has died at the scene and 7 others have been transported for medical treatment after a van carrying 8 people crashed off a bridge on Nokamai Road into the Mataura River at 1:20 this afternoon. 2 people were flown to Dunedin Hospital for medical treatment and a further 5 were transported to Southland Hospital by ambulance. The extent of their injuries is not confirmed at this stage. The crash occurred approximately 30 kilometres from Lumsden. A serious crash investigator is looking into the cause of the accident. The latest results from the 2013 census show Southland has the highest proportion of Christians in the country, but results also show the region has the largest growth in proportion of people with no religion. 51.9% of Southlanders identified themselves as Christian in last year's census, a fall from 60.5% in 2006. While the region had the highest proportion of Christians overall, the total number of Southlanders who identify with the Christian religion fell 13.1% since 2006. The South also saw the largest increase in the proportion of people with no religion, at 42.9%, up from 32.9% in 2006. And the region followed national trends with a drop in the number of regular smokers. The proportion of adult smokers in Southland fell from 24.3% in 2006 to 19.2% last year, a decrease of 3,000 people. Among those aged 15 to 19 years, the proportion of smokers fell from 26.2% in 2006 to 16.2% last year. That's a 43% drop in the total number of smokers in this age group in Southland, or 660 less young people lighting up. Census Manager Sarah Minson says local census information forms a picture of the region and what's needed to succeed. When it comes to grazing lambs, it's no longer where the grass is greener, but where the grass is sweeter. A trial's underway in the south where the Alliance Group, in conjunction with one of the United Kingdom's largest supermarket chains, are testing the impact of high sugar grasses on lamb growth. Sainsbury's supermarket has joined forces with Alliance Group to trial high sugar ryegrass in a bid to enhance on-farm productivity.
Part of the reason why we're doing this research is to see if we can produce lambs more efficiently, and if there's a growth rate advantage, I think that's beneficial for the farmers. So that's part of the reason why we're doing this trial.
It's the second year in the 3-year trial and it's taking place on 3 southern farms.
And they've got the same sowing rate, same species, they're managed the same, on-farm measurements, live weight, and also the pasture growth rate's been collected this year to see if we can put together a story of a full years of the pasture activity on farm.
High sugar ryegrasses are fairly new to New Zealand, but results to date are pleasing.
Initial findings show that there's an advantage of around 30 to 40 grams a day for lambs grazing high sugar grass over a standard ryegrass.
The sweetened pastures seem to appeal to the lamb's palate.
Lambs are quite selective grazers, and they obviously select the sweeter pastures and the clovers, the ice cream of the pastures first. So at this stage, lambs prefer high sugar grass over some of the other standard ryegrasses.
One of the trial farms located at Hedgehope is monitoring around 300 lambs, and they're seeing around a kilo a week advantage on last year's results.
We're trying to get around a 32 kilo average weight going on, and they'll just be killed as per normal, about 41, 42 kilos. So as they come off, more lambs at 32 will go on. And we're doing that because we want a decent length of time on the trial with the lambs.
And there are other benefits on top of the 10% gains.
Well, we were doing DAG scores on the lambs last year, and there was definitely seeing an advantage in cleaner lambs coming off that. So we haven't got enough growth information yet, but we suspect it could be a little slower growing in the spring, but that's more than made up for with the extra growth rate.
Despite the encouraging results to date, sweet ryegrass is not likely to replace traditional feed.
We're probably looking about 15% in a strategic area that we would target with mainly a young stock, so hoggets, and then obviously finishing lambs through the summer.
Expectations are positive going forward, with options in feed, breeding and operations leading to consistent gains.
We were talking before about, the sort of weights we used to be killing at not that long ago. Now we're at sort of 19 kilos. and we're getting earlier every year, and that's a combination of sheep genetics, plant genetics and farm management systems.
The trial wraps up next year. Margot Sutherland, South Today News. And staying with farming news, Federated Farmers Chief Executive Officer Connor English has announced he's stepping down from the role effective from the 23rd of July. Mr English says that after a great Christmas break and a great deal of thought, he's decided it's time for him to move on and do other things. Federated Farmers President Bruce Wills says the organisation has reluctantly accepted Connor's resignation and appreciate him giving 6 months' notice of his departure to enable a smooth transition to a new chief executive. Mr English has been Federated Farmers CEO for 6 years. Stay with us. Up after the break, success for the Kakapo breeding program on Codfish Island. Welcome back. It's hoped to be a good season for Kakapo numbers, with confirmation from Kakapo Recovery that at least 2 females are incubating eggs on Whenuaho, Codfish Island. Kakapo Recovery is calling for volunteers to help with what's expected to be a very busy season. Kakapo Recovery advocate Karen Arnold spoke to Hunter Andrews earlier today.
At the moment, we're celebrating with Kakapo Recovery program because we're actually enjoying the first breeding season that we've had since 2011, the summer of. So that means that we're going to be adding to the population, which is currently 124. So Kakapo are still on the brink of extinction, and we're going to be working flat out for the next 3 months, ensuring that there's the survival of as many chicks as we can.
Why has it been this 3 years since last fertile eggs?
It's actually not unusual. It's the way that Kakapo breed. So on Codfish Island, the females have a cue from the abundance of rimu fruit that's on the island, and for the past 2 summers there basically hasn't been enough for the birds to feed their chicks. This year there's patchy fruiting of rimu trees on the island, but obviously there's been enough to trigger mating.
And staff will obviously, this will be a fairly intensive time. What are these eggs? These are still fertilised eggs confirmed. They're not hatched yet, are they? What work's involved?
So the eggs, we've only got 4 at the moment, so we're expecting potentially another 7 to 10 or even more nests and more eggs. We won't know if these first 4 that have been laid by Lisa and Tumeke are fertile for another week. So once that's established, then it's just crazy times on the island. There's 24-hour, 7-day-a-week surveillance of the eggs, the nests, the mums, to ensure that we give them every chance of survival.
Kakapos are incredibly popular with the public, aren't they? You actually are. There's a bit of babying, or excuse the pun, but babying to be done, isn't there? You need some volunteers.
Oh, we do indeed. So the interest in Kakapo Recovery is not just national either. We've got a huge following internationally. People are jumping on planes from Australia and further afield to come and help volunteer on the island. So the stints for volunteers are 2 weeks at a time. We need people to help feed out the supplementary food that we feed our kakapo to make sure that they're in good condition for breeding. We need people to mind the nests, and that involves camping out overnight for 2 weeks beside a nest and just keeping an eye on the activity on the nest. And we also need people to cook for the crew that ascends on the island, because we've got staff, we've got Kakapo Recovery Rangers, and we've got heaps of volunteers.
I know a few years ago chicks were brought to the mainland here, and the public, we got a chance, some people got a chance to see them. Do you think that could happen again? They're very popular. It's
a great likelihood that that will happen. Basically, we take vulnerable chicks off the nests and bring them to Invercargill to a special quarantine facility where we do hand raise them, and that's usually because there may not be enough food left on the island for the mums to feed, or the mums may be struggling, but it's just a way for us to ensure that the chicks get every chance, and they'll be here up until for about 6 weeks before we take them back and prepare to release them back into the wild.
Police are urging people with new valuables following Christmas and the Boxing Day sales to make sure they record the serial numbers. While a police spokesperson says the task of recording serial numbers can be boring, it can mean the difference between getting the item returned and never seeing it again. Snap.org.nz is an online tool that provides people with the ability to privately record serial numbers. Snap's supported and promoted by the police, but is run by Datacom and secured using the New Zealand Government RealMe login service. Police have no access to any private details stored on the Snap website, but in the event of a burglary or theft, the owner is able to log into the site, print their Snap list and pass it on to the police. Plans are well underway for the construction of a memorial to workers who have lost their lives in work-related accidents. Southland CTU convener Anna Hufstadler says support for the memorial from the community has been great, with some local employers even donating materials. It's hoped the memorial will be in place for International Workers' Memorial Day on the 28th of April. Ms Hufstadler discussed the project and possible sites for the memorial with the City Council late last year.
I think that we had a really positive meeting with the City Council on the 10th of December, and I'd have to acknowledge the help that Parks and Reserves and the Council have actually given us to get to this point and getting the Workers' Memorial happening for the 28th of April. So at the moment we're just waiting for them to come back and give us a decision on our preferred site.
What is that preferred site?
Our preferred site is right next to the City Council building. In the gardens, we've organised a stone and a plaque, and we think that site would be really appropriate because of its location and the flagpole, and just the fact that we get a lot of people being able to see it when they're walking into the City Council.
And so obviously every year there would be some sort of official commemoration on that site?
Absolutely, on the 28th of April every year we would have some sort of service there in remembrance of those workers, and also as a reminder that we need to be really vigilant about health and safety.
And it's not as if we're a region that isn't dependent on those quite dangerous industries really, when you look at it, with farming, fishing and of course forestry.
Absolutely. I think as a region we do have a lot of workers who work in potential employment that could be extremely harmful, if not fatal.
Celebrating their 66th Independence Day today, Southern Sri Lankan students and part of their community joined Southern Institute of Technology staff in Invercargill to raise their national flag for the first time. February 4th commemorates political independence from British rule, which ended in 1948, although the country formerly known as Ceylon was also previously occupied by both the Portuguese and Dutch. Today's national holiday is when historic national struggles are remembered and celebrated with flag hoisting ceremonies, dances and parades. SIT is expecting around 50 Sri Lankan students this year. And you can catch Sport Up next, where we talk with the players following the Highlanders' first pre-season hit out in Queenstown on Friday. From the news team, good evening.